In this lesson, we'll talk about painting a specular map for our creature. So as we talked about, we don't really want the shininess of this creature to be the same over his entire body, which right now it is. But we want to actually change as it goes over. So maybe we want this area to be less shiny and this area to be more shiny. So what we can do is modulate that using a painted map. Let's go ahead and jump into our material first. And let's go into our specular channel. And right now it's a very broad spec, which doesn't really give us kind of a wet look, kind of the look that I want to go for. And so I'm going to go ahead and just reduce the width on our specular. So it's something a little bit more like that. You can increase the height of that. So we end up with something that's a little bit more like that, kind of a wet look. All right, so now we need to create a map that's going to tell the model where we actually want it to be shiny and where we don't want it to be shiny. So go back into our 3D Paint layout here, and we want to make sure to choose specular for what we're going to be painting on. And if we go into our texture, we want to actually choose our specular map right there. And so what we can do now is start painting on these areas. So for instance, on the skin where we want it to be very shiny, it may be okay right there, but where we want it to be less shiny, I'm going to get kind of a black, and I want to come in on some of these areas up here and start to paint out the specularity. So I can come in and you can kind of see it update here. It's not the best up visually, but you can definitely see it, and then you can see how it's wet kind of around that area, but maybe not necessarily right on it. So I can come in here on these scales and sort of paint out that specularity. And I'm just using kind of a dark black, saying I don't want this to be specular in this area where I paint it. Okay. Same thing down here, and you can be a little bit more exact than I'm being right now. I'm just kind of showing you what it's doing here. If you want to get in really closely, you could also manipulate your color texture or your bump map to get the result that you want. You know, making sure that you're everywhere you have these scales would be black. So on here as well, maybe we don't want these scales back here to be as shiny. So maybe we want to be a little bit more shiny than these. So we'll take the color back up to maybe like a gray, and we can come in here and paint that out. So you can see, just comparing this one to this one, one of them's a little bit more shiny than the one we just painted. So you can come in here and just modify this a little bit. And we'll do the same thing sort of over here. And you can make this as shiny or as dull as you want, depending on the look that you're going for your character. For mine, I'm just going to take this down just a little bit in just a few specific areas. But I do want to make sure that I leave that specularity because I think it looks good on some of these other areas. So let's come in here on the front, and we'll kind of take that down on the chest. Let's kind of reduce that specularity up on these. Just coming along the top and then down under the bottom. Okay, do the same thing over here on this side. Again, I'm just going to do it real quickly. And coming in here, you can see how really, really shiny this is. But maybe we want to reduce the specularity, but maybe just in certain areas. So we can take our brush size down, and we can start to just paint in a little bit like that. So just some little bits that are less specular, and then leave some of that specularity in there. Okay, we can come in here and sort of just break it up a little bit, just so it's not even across the whole surface. Come in up here and do the same thing. And oftentimes you'll have to sort of turn your model around so that you can see that specular. So you can see, kind of get a better idea of what it is you're painting, and then you kind of look back and forth to get a better idea. You can see how we're sort of breaking up that specularity in there. You could use your stamps in this process as well. Just kind of breaking that up a little bit more. Okay. Now you could do the same thing here. We could come in with our with some of a different brush settings here. So get a larger brush size. We could come down to brushes and start to maybe use some of the brush presets that we have. So you can come in under your standard tools, maybe get the chalk, which you can see has a different look here, and you can start to break up the specularity that way. So maybe it's gives you a little bit more detail in here versus just having a really plain specular highlight across the whole surface. And you can maybe break it up a little bit more, even more than maybe the bump is doing as far as breaking up your specular. We could come in here, maybe get our brush size a little bit bigger, just to kind of break that specular up just a little bit. Okay, and if you take a look in your texture, that is sort of the specular that you're working with. All right, so once you've got your specular map painted, the next thing that we need to do is to take our maps that we've created and export those, and then sort of re-import them, reassemble them onto the model that we had with our sculpt and all of our displacement map and a normal map and the color map. So get everything put together for our final product, because it's still, we want to use this creature, animate it, rig it, whatever project we want to use it for. It's got to be usable at a low resolution. And so just as we did with baking out the sculpt maps, the displacement and normal maps, we'll combine those with the color maps so that we can get a good final product. So we'll go ahead and start that process in the next lesson.